Hello everybody. My name is Finn Mackay. I'm one of the trustees of the BSA, and on behalf of all the trustees, it's a real pleasure and a privilege to thank everybody and welcome you all for being here. Thank you to all the speakers for making this event happen, and welcome, of course, to all of you who are attending from schools, colleges, universities. I can see all these names of different places coming up here. So welcome to you who are teachers, your ambassadors, your leaders for sociology. Welcome to all you pupils and students, you future sociologists, all of you. So I first studied sociology when I went to a community college in Leeds. This was in the 1990s. And I did an A-level in sociology in order to get into university. I hadn't got enough points and I had to do some extra courses. I absolutely loved it. It really gave a name to things that I'd been interested in the world already. The notes from that A-level sociology that I did, I carried on referring to and used those in every single job that I had afterwards. So I've worked as a youth worker, I've worked as an advice worker, and then in local government, in policy, on domestic abuse prevention education in schools, and on anti-bullying in schools as well. And I used my sociological knowledge in all of those. And of course, not least, I use it now because I'm a senior lecturer in sociology here at the University of the West of England, UE Bristol. To me, sociology is the study of power. It's a study of how power works in society, who it works for, and who it works against. So we study how humans have built this world for better and worse. And of course, we think about how that could be changed. And we need people doing that. We need people doing that today, perhaps more than ever. And that is just one reason why I'm so proud to introduce this event on sociology and sociologists, from curriculum to being change makers in your own careers, in your own communities, and indeed in the world. So on behalf of the BSA trustees, thank you to all the speakers and organisers. Thank you to all of you for attending. And yes, welcome to what I know is going to be a great event.
Great. Thank you so much, Finn. I think that's my cue to take it from here. So hello, everyone. Welcome from me as well. I'm Alison Hui, and I'm based in my day job at Lancaster University in the Sociology department. But it's my great pleasure today to be chairing the rest of this event. So just to give you a sense of what the structure is going to be, we're going to spend the first section of the event speaking to 4 different people who studied sociology and have now gone on to have a huge range of different roles and work experiences. And so we're going to be hearing about some of those experiences and what sort of reflections they draw from them in the first section. We will then have a short period for questions and answers. And if you would like to ask a question, you're more than welcome to type it into the chat. You can start doing so at any point if you'd like to do that. And we also, if you would like to, we have the opportunity, you could come on and ask your question using audio as well. So when we get to that section, I will let you know about that opportunity. And then we're going to have a short comfort break. And after that, we are going to move on to hear from a number of students who are studying sociology both at A-level or at university right now, and hear about their experiences of how they have been learning in that subject, thinking about its relationship to their trajectories. And again, we'll have a chance for a quick Q&A section at the end of their contributions, where you're more than welcome to contribute again. Just so that you know, Tallulah mentioned at the beginning of the event, it is being recorded, but we will have those Q&A sessions not recorded. So if that makes a difference to how you'd like to contribute, I wanted to make sure that you knew that information. Okay, I think that's all of my introductions. So I'd like to start off with the group of alumni of experienced sociologists who are now working in different contexts by just asking them to introduce themselves briefly and say what their current job role is. And we'll just sort of have a go round everyone first and then get into a bit more detail about some of your experiences. So whichever one of you would like to start out, I'm happy to take the floor and give it to you.
I'm happy to jump in.
Please do, Liam.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. My name's Liam Maguire. I live in South Wales. My professional background is I was a captain in the military in the Royal Welsh. I've moved on to manage children's homes. I've also been a head of operations for a family charity, but I now currently am a leadership management trainer and consultant. So that's what I do currently. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, Liam.
Shall I? Hello, my name is Eleanor Goodfellow. I am based down in Sussex, and I recently took on the job as a prison offender manager. So it's been quite a turbulent journey from degree to something that resembles my degree, but now work in the prison sector, supporting prisoners through their sentences, hopefully to reduce reoffending. Fingers crossed.
Great, thanks so much. Jake, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. Yeah, first of all, just thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Jake and I'm based in London. I work as a press manager for a responsible investment NGO. So essentially we campaign to try and make the financial sector both more environmentally and socially responsible. And it's my sort of role within that to speak to the media about the different campaigns and bits of research that we do. And I'll hand over to Nick.
Hi guys, I'm Nick. I'm based in West Sussex. I am a teacher at a school called Young Epilepsy. So it's a school for epileptic children. I've been doing it for the last 3 years now in this school. And outside of this work, I'm a personal trainer for people with special needs, specifically autism.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. So I thought I'd get us started by sharing a quote that I really love, because I think careers is quite an interesting concept sociologically, but we don't always hear discussions of that. So, you know, often career in kind of popular discussions can seem like that ladder that you just climb. You start at a subject, you end up at a job role. It's, you know, sort of straightforward. But I really love the quote that Everest C. Hughes, who was an American sociologist, had, where Everest discussed careers as involving a sense of moving in time and with age. And I just thought, I mean, it's so broad, it could encompass a lot of things, but I thought it might be an interesting starting point for us to hear about how each of you would describe moving from studying sociology to taking up the role that you have today through, you know, Eleanor, you already mentioned some perhaps turbulent paths to get there. So I wonder if each of you would mind just sharing a bit more about what that movement was like and sort of how you see that growing out of, in different ways, your experience in sociology. Liam, I don't know if you'd be willing to start us off again.
Yeah, great. Happy to talk about that. It's interesting because as I progressed through my career, I started to reflect backwards on the career choices I made and tried to find a connection between all of them. And ultimately, that connection is something which is really at the core of sociology, and it's the sort of the study and the understanding of humans. So all of my roles have been very much focused on either trying to work with humans, to support humans, to lead humans, to interact with humans. As I said, when I left university and I went to Royal Military Academy Sandhurst and I became an officer in the army. So it was very much about training young recruits. Ended up going to Afghanistan in 2012. So very much a different culture, a different society, different institutions, very different makeup of people. And we needed to understand not only the soldiers that I was leading, but also the people we were trying to support. So that was really interesting and very much linked to sociology and trying to understand those different sorts of cultures coming together and how we can support them. So that's sort of one aspect of that. Moving on from that, I ended up managing children's homes and managing some complex children in a secure children's home. Again, a different type of person in a different institution, different interactions. Ultimately, I was leading teams, multiple teams in a very hostile service, sometimes very difficult service, and it needed a different set of skills, but ultimately people focused. Following on from that, I ended up being a head of operations for a children's charity, a family charity called Home Start Cymru. They do amazing work in Wales. Again, a different demographic of people, different service, very connected to different institutions, so education, health. So you have to have that good awareness of people and how I can support that as much as I possibly can. Now I work in a housing association, which supports families to have safe and stable homes. And I just think, looking back, when I've spoke with Sunny about this previously, even though I haven't necessarily directly touched on sociology in more recent times, I think my heart has always been in people, which is, as I said at the beginning of what, so the center of sociology. So I think all of my roles have been very much focused on either supporting or leading people. And I think my original enjoyment of studying sociology has helped push me in that direction in every single one of my career choices. So yeah, that would be me in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Liam. And just to let everyone else know, so the one thing that you don't realize, but all 5 of us right now have in common, is that we've all featured or are about to feature on a podcast that teacher Sunny Ganesi hosts. That's the JCOS Presents Sound Sociology podcast. And right now, there is a series this year around careers, and all of our speakers have featured, and I helped kick off the series with a chat with Sunny. So massive thanks to Sunny, both for that, which started some of these conversations, as well as Sunny was the one who's been instrumental in organizing this today and bringing us together. So thanks so much, Liam. Who wanted to pitch in next and share something about what your movement has been like through the different parts of your career after sociology?
I think I can kind of relate to Liam about people, and I think it's the curiosity about people. So I finished my degree in criminology and social policy, and I think when we talk about careers and the movement, I think it's you can get very narrow-minded about what's available, because there's a very few graduate schemes that tailor to people that have studied the things that we've studied. So you apply for these jobs, you are a tiny fish in a ginormous pond full of people with a lot of life experience, and you realize that actually you need to get out there and get more life experience before you can take on these jobs, because the education is essential, but your experience and those transferable skills were the only way I was going to get kind of the job that married with what I was passionate about. So I kind of found my way into management in retail, but actually it was always people focused, whether it be the customers, whether it be the staff members. And every store that I worked, because I was constantly moving, because I constantly wanted more and bigger and more challenges, the demographic changed, the culture changed, the people changed, the age of the people changed. So you're forever tailoring your approach and your response based on the curiosity and the understanding and awareness of people. And I guess all that experience then culminating in kind of applying for the prison service and going in as part of the probation service, and then moving across into a prison itself, into that establishment. So I think it is a constant movement and it's constant development. And I don't think I necessarily don't realize how much I probably tap into that side of my learning, because it's something that you adapt to and you learn and you experience every day. And now my curiosity extends to the demographic, to people that are convicted for a multitude of offences. So again, your curiosity has changed to a different group of people, and a different group of people because it's specifically men. But then you're always learning and always growing and appreciating different circumstances. So it is constant movement and constant challenge and constant curiosity that I think makes it worthwhile.
That's fantastic. Really interesting, and such a great summary as well, because I can see both of you have moved through so many different roles in a way that really makes that quite visible. Jake or Nick, which one of you wanted to come in next to share your experience of what that movement looked like?
I'm happy to go next. I was just reflecting on, when you study sociology, it's not a strictly vocational thing to study. So it's not like doing medicine or law. But what's great about that is you really get to study things that you care about or are passionate about. And then when you move into working, sort of that thing of moving through time and age, to me, is a question of starting to figure out, exactly how it is that you could work on the things that you care about. So whether that's through being someone who works on policy, or someone who works on media, or someone who works on, project delivery, whatever facet it is. And that's kind of what you start figuring out through time and age. And that might create a lot of change in your career in terms of how it is that you're working on the thing that you're working on. But I think, I don't know, I from what my kind of fellow speakers have been saying, I think there's also something about, you kind of keep returning to that first question, which you're figuring out at uni, of what it is that you care about and what it is that you're passionate about. And yeah, both of those things really speak to me. And I think especially, I loved what Finn said in the introduction about, sociology as understanding how humans have created sort of the world that we live in, and using that as a means to question how it could be otherwise. And I think wherever I go moving through time and age with my career, that's probably the question that I'm going to keep coming back to. Yeah,
that's really interesting. Can I just follow you up on that a little bit? Could you give a kind of, if you have any, a kind of example in terms of like the particular roles or activities you've been involved with, that where that questioning might have been manifest?
I guess, yeah. So for example, before my current job, I was working at a communications agency. So doing lots of different things within that, whether that's working on social media, or lobbying the government and campaigning, or working with the press. And so I then realized I wasn't really working on the kinds of subjects that I was interested in, as I was mostly working for big multinational companies, and there wasn't much of a social purpose. So I kind of figured out, I've got some skills from within this, for example, in media, and now I want to use that to shift into actually working on, an issue that I'm passionate about. So changing the economy so that it's more inclusive for people on the planet. So yeah, that was kind of a gear change, kind of moving from working in a few different ways on something that I wasn't that passionate about, and then swapping to being focused on one of them, but to focus on something that I care about. I think, does that answer your question as a sort of example of a gear change?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful, because that's one of the things where, it links with what Eleanor was just saying about learning things from particular roles you're in, and then realizing that kind of recalibration of, oh, wait, okay, I've developed this skill, but I don't want to use it here. I want to use it somewhere else, which I think is really useful to hear about, because, often when we think about careers, once you've started to develop your own, you can see how you've done that, but that might not be part of the story that we always tell each other when we're sort of talking casually about how a career works. So that's really helpful. Thank you. Now, Nick, certainly not least, although you happen to be last, what's the movement been like for you in terms of your career?
It sort of changed quite a lot. And it wasn't until I was speaking to Sunny doing the podcast that I actually reflected on sort of my career choices, because originally my plan was from the age of about 12 to be a Royal Marine. That's all I wanted to be. It's what I trained to be. It's what I all ever wanted to be. And it wasn't until I turned 17 that I went to be one. And then unfortunately I have some health difficulties where it was sort of thanks, but no thanks. And that was my whole plan just gone in an instant. So I was a bit like, okay, what do I do now? And I ended up going to university, studying sports, like being a PE teacher and doing physiology. And then I left university and came into the role at not doing sports specifically, but being a school specifically for autistic children. And it just sort of developed from there. I've always been similar to what the fellow speakers have said about being very people orientated. I've always enjoyed working with people. I enjoy that social interaction. I really feed off of that. And I enjoy getting to know people and sort of learning what makes them tick. And my role now, especially because it's a school specifically for epileptic children, it is extremely interesting because on a physiological side, they so seeing seizures is something I deal with daily. They can be in a complete different mood. They can be happy, buzzing in the morning, have a seizure, and then when they've sort of come to, their mood and their personality almost completely shifts. And it's really sort of honest, like knowing what makes them tick and using sort of everything you learn in sociology. And again, it wasn't until Sonny sort of said that he remembers what I was like in school and how it actually makes sense what I'm doing now. But I didn't actually reflect on it up until the podcast. But yeah, so my sort of career has sort of chopped and changed, and I sort of almost didn't fall into this, but once the opportunity arose, I saw the role coming up. I thought I'd go for it. That was at school. That was 6 years ago, and I've just loved it ever since. So again, my career's varied, but now I'm in a place that I love, and I've also taken it outside of here, where I'm a personal trainer. So I've sort of combined my two sort of loves, fitness and working with children with special needs. And I work with children with autism outside of the school. I take them swimming, cycling, in the gym, sort of combining everything, and just, yeah, it's great. I love it. I'm very fortunate that I love what I do. Yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. And I think it's so interesting because all four of you have really had quite different paths and quite different ways that, you know, you've navigated what you thought you were going to do or what you hoped you'd do, and a sequence of different kinds of experiences that got you there. But it's really interesting to me because for all of you, it sounds like there certainly wasn't that stereotype of a career like a ladder, or if there was, it certainly didn't manifest. And, you know, it's just making me think about, you know, some of those things that have already been mentioned about the way that sociology as a subject is not necessarily one with an obvious destination. You know, we sometimes talk about sociology as an exporter discipline because people go on to so many different industries, and even sociologists who train to end up lecturing in universities might end up in quite different departments. So, you know, it's really interesting when we think about some of those stereotypes we have about careers and the way that, you know, they might not always play well with what we think about sociology, because if you do see that sort of straightforward ladder, then sociology might not seem like it's going to be very good for your career. Or sometimes I've heard students worry that, you know, recruiters are only interested in hiring people whose degrees they understand or know about, and being worried that they won't be able to compete because nobody necessarily knows what sociology is unless they've studied it. It's not like it's on the tip of everyone's tongue as a kind of valuable degree that people know what those skills are. So, I mean, I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on, for example, a student who might be hearing some of these messages about the problems of how sociology relates to a career. You know, what might you say to students like that who encounter some of these stereotypes, but perhaps are still really curious about how they could move forward or what they could do to make a difference after studying sociology?
I think the reason I picked doing a degree in sociology, criminology, is because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I loved the subject I was passionate about, and I was always curious. I'm nosy, I just am. So understanding more about people, understanding about why we are who we are and why we're in the situations we're in, fascinated me. And I think it wasn't until you get towards the end of your degree and your friends who are doing business studies or your friends that are doing architecture, they've got their grad schemes and everyone's doing okay. And then you're right, you get to a place where you're thinking, okay, so what's next for little old Eleanor? So I think it's about not underestimating the skills that you learn and the ability that you have. Just because you might not fall into something straight away, that doesn't mean that all those skills and the ability to analyze. So every day now I have to analyze risk, so analyze how dangerous these people that could be released into the community, the risk that they pose. Without my background in social sciences, I couldn't do that job as well as I hope I do, because I couldn't analyze, I couldn't think curiously, I couldn't be as nosy as I am without those skills. So I think it's not being afraid to necessarily as well fall into something that isn't perfect straight away, because there is, and as we say, there is no job that defines the degrees that we have or the education that we have. All I ever said in life was that I wanted to make a difference. So whether that be helping someone with their prescription so that they don't feel like they're going to die, which is dramatic, but it's the kind of interactions that I would have on a daily basis. I helped that person, so I at least did what I fulfilled something for myself that day. So then I used that for 5 years, and it's transformed into something that now is a career. So just because it didn't happen straight away doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. But there is so much more out there than you realized. I didn't even know my job existed. If someone said, oh, what's a prison offender manager? People would look very confused, and I did at the beginning. So I think, again, it's being curious about what is out there, because there is so much more than meets the eye. You don't have to fall into these specific corporate grad scheme pathways that I thought I had to. And it's only during this podcast that made me realize that I actually have done well, and I have done what I set out to do. It might have taken me a bit longer, but I did it. And that wasn't fulfilling the person that 21-year-old Eleanor thought you were supposed to be. It was just taking your time a little bit. So there is so much more. It is nerve-wracking because it isn't one straight line, but it's about always for me, it was always following my passion and always making a difference, whether it be small or huge.
That's really interesting. And although some listeners might be interested to know more about what your role actually is, since we have limited time, I will say, listen to the podcast, because yes. Eleanor does a great job. I had no idea what the role was, and you do a great job of explaining it. So if you're curious about the role in particular, you can follow up
nice
there.
Nice little advert for the podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. Did someone else want to come in on this question of how we sort of respond to some of these stereotypes and ideas about what the link is between careers and sociology?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on Eleanor's point there. I think a lot of us are always looking at life as job roles, for example, as we're sort of a key and we're trying to find the right lock for us to fit into. I would say flip that narrative when it comes to sociology. So for me, in every single one of my jobs, if you were to ask me what's the most important skills, there are several that generally come up, but one of the most important is to be able to understand people and the environment that you work in. Because if you don't understand the people, you don't understand the environment, you are going to skew a reality and you're going to get things massively wrong. And sociology does that. So in essence, that skill is essential in virtually every single role you could ever think of. I can't think of one job where that wouldn't be a hugely important factor or a hugely important skill. So what I would say is, if you are worried about the role you're going into, worried about stereotypes, worried about what lock you'll fit into, flip the narrative and say, hold on a minute, I've got an education or qualification that makes me not just a key, but a master key. I'm now a master key because I have one of the most fundamental skills that is needed in virtually every single role there is to do with people in society. So flip the narrative and don't worry about where you fit, and just think, hold on, look at I'm a master key now. I've got a very, very important fundamental skill that is universally accepted and beneficial to many, many jobs. And I think, yeah, do that. So flip the narrative. I think that will empower you more.
That's great. Jake or Nick, did you want to come in on any of this?
I would say I really agree with the points that both Eleanor and Liam have raised. And I think one of the main things that I'm taking away from both of what they've said is that it's really powerful to know how to describe the skills that sociology gives you. And I think that is almost more of a barrier than people not being responsive to having a degree or having studied sociology. As long as you can describe all of these things that you can take away from your degree or your A-levels, whether that's writing skills or analysis skills, data skills, all of the things that we're discussing, I think then you're in a strong position. But it sometimes can feel a bit difficult to do that, especially when you're starting out with your career and you're graduating and applying to things and you're figuring out this whole thing. But I think that's why events like this are really valuable, because it really encourages you to put 2 and 2 together and make those links between all of the different job possibilities that kind of a degree in sociology would give you. But actually figuring out how you can really describe how you're suitable for them. And I think that's the crucial thing, actually.
Yeah, really, really useful and interesting to think about. I was doing an event with alumni previously where someone in talking about that kind of thing said that actually part of it's keeping in mind that even though at school or at uni, you might sometimes form a friend group with who are studying the same subject, if you start thinking about the people you know who've studied different subjects and how you think differently than they do, that is part of the way to start identifying some of those skills and describing them, because you realize, wait, this is just obvious to me that I would ask this question, and yet my friend studying another subject would never think of it. So that probably means that's part of what I've developed from my sociological study and training. So yeah, really interesting and useful point. Nick, did you want to come in around this topic?
Yeah, I'm sort of just echoing what the other panelists have said, but I think in relating it to sociology, I think as with sociology, there was, when I was doing it, there was no sort of right or wrong. If you believed in something at a certain viewpoint, you sort of used your evidence that I believe this because, and that sort of translates to everything you do really. Like you don't, there's no right or wrong. Like for example, I had my career set for 4 or 5 years and it was taken, like I couldn't do it. And at the time, it was the end of the world, but actually in reflection now, it's like, that's okay. Like there are millions of jobs out there and there's so much things that you can do with a set of skills. If you particularly want to do one thing and it doesn't work out, there's millions of jobs out there you probably don't even know exist yet, that you can easily go into. And I think that's it, is knowing that with sociology, the skills you learn are so transferable to almost anything that you do. And it's, again, understanding that you don't need to worry about, because I remember when I was in school, there was a lot, I felt there was a lot of pressure to go to university. That was sort of like the common route. And when my career sort of, what I wanted to do, and I was like, right, I have to go to university. And I've got so many friends that done apprenticeships. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, you're doing an apprenticeship. But then now, I've got 2 friends that are, one of them is head of a warehouse. He's got like 1,000 employees and he done an apprenticeship. Like, and I think he studied sociology as well. So understanding that no matter, there's no set guidelines what you have to do. You can pick and choose what you want. Don't fall into this trap of you have to go to university, you have to do this. Find your own path, because, and I feel like sociology helps that a lot, because there's no right or wrong. If you believe in something, you do it. There's no, you have to do this, you have to do that. You do your own path. So yeah, that's my sort of take on it.
That's great. And it's really interesting because it does link up to something else I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, all of your thoughts. Because, you know, we do certainly hear discussions about subjects that, whether it's the government or family members or whomever, are sort of prioritizing as being particularly important today, whether it's because it's related to digital change or progress, or, you know, whatever we might hear in terms of the discourse. But I'm really curious about how you see that relationship between sort of real leadership or real, you know, important, transformative, potentially work in the different kinds of sectors that you've worked in or known, and how you sort of see that link to having experience with sociology as a subject versus, as you were just saying, Nick, you know, a sense of like, you have to do this step. If you do uni, then you'll get to this step, and then you'll, you know, that more linear way of thinking about it. So I don't know if any of you have reflections on sort of how you see leadership relating to sociology in a certain way, or what kind of difference you think it makes when you have worked with people who perhaps have some background in the social sciences or know a bit about people's trajectories after they've studied in the social sciences, and how those might compare to other kinds of ways that people contribute with different disciplinary backgrounds. Anyone want to start off?
I'm happy to kick off on this one.
Fabulous.
I think what really came to mind for me was thinking about, just in relation to leadership and transformative work. Sociology is all about sort of, it's a lens, it's a way of looking at the world, right? And, you know, often that involves zooming in on detail and the particular, and then also zooming back out again to think about the wider context. And I think in any kind of transformational field of work you might be interested in, that is so important. And I think because that's the key to storytelling, and we need stories to have any kind of transformation in society, whether you're you know, a tech entrepreneur and you want to introduce a new piece of technology to the world, or whether you're a campaigner and you want to, you know, see a shift in government policy, either of those things requires you to get people to understand a certain story about the world and how the world is. And I really see such a direct link between sociology and that, you know, the particular and also the broader picture, and how that means you can tell stories. And I see that all the time in the job that I do, because what we are working on, the topic is the financial sector, and I actually don't have a financial background. So, you know, that can be quite a complex, challenging, technical world, and especially for public, you know, the public to interact with. And so doing that, zooming in on detail to draw attention to wider things, is a key way that you can make people understand, you know, how is it this big complex thing that we call our financial industry actually makes, you know, tangible changes in my life and to the planet, and drawing the connections between those two things. So I feel like that's quite a clear example to me that I found in my own experience, but I'm sure probably all the fellow panelists have sort of similar things.
I also think it's that ability to listen as well. So, and in order to tell stories, we have to be able to listen and share those experiences. So I've noticed, especially the kind of job I'm in now, a lot of us come from a sociological or a psychology background. So we all listen in a different way. So in order to make a difference, to help people, you have to be able to listen before you can react. And I think sometimes that's a skill, because we're curious, we ask questions, but in order to get the answers, we have to listen too. So any research that you do, you're always listening and trying to pick out those examples. So I think that's something that I've noticed specifically in the job I'm in now, is something that we have to do well. It's not, we don't have a choice, but that comes more naturally if you're inquisitive and you think about people in a specific way, and you're looking through that lens, as Jake said, you're looking through all those lenses because you're asking the right questions, because you're curious, and then you're listening to those kind of really clear answers, which tells those people's stories. Because even the people that I work with, some people might feel they don't have a story to share, but they do. There are so many reasons why they're in the position they're in now. So by listening to their story and understanding their perspective, we can have hopefully a transformative impact on lots of lives.
Really great. Yeah. Nick or Liam, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I thought Jake and Ella's point's really good. And that one thing that made me reflect on then was how a lot of subjects you may study, whether it be maths, history, science, generally they're quite set. You know what the facts are, you know what happened, and you reflect on them. Whereas I think with sociology, human existence and society is forever evolving. It's always changing. So I think Ella mentioned how you've got to listen. You've got to continually listen. It's because sociology today will be very different to sociology in a year's time, in 10 years' time, in 100 years' time. Sort of what we knew 1,000 years ago is very different to what we knew 10 years ago, 1 year ago. Who knows what we'll know in 100 years? I think society's evolving so quickly. It's going left and right politically. We have our ups, we have our downs. I just think sociology is one of those topics that you need to constantly be on the ball with for new changes and developments. And you need to, I think Jake said, you need to zoom in on the specifics, but you also need to zoom out sometimes, and you need to have someone in the crow's nest to say, okay, what's happening in the far distance? So it is very, very complex, but that is the nature of understanding humans and society. So yeah, I think the points they mentioned, I completely agree with and add to that.
Really interesting. Nick, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just again, sort of echoing whatever everyone else has said. But and I think one of the important things, like relating it to sociology, is looking. You might have a scenario or something you're looking at, and instead of just looking at it as a whole, but like delving deeper and thinking why it's happening. And it's something that obviously you do a lot in sociology. And for example, it's something I do a lot in my current job. So I have all pupils display challenging behavior, whether it be physical, it might be they display different varying challenging behavior. And instead of it takes a lot of sociological skill, and instead of just seeing their behavior and reacting to it the normal way, actually sort of picking it apart and saying, actually, why are they doing this? And actually sort of trying, rather than just being reactive and not actually dealing with the situation, being proactive and starting to think why they're doing it. So then you can actually help them in that sort of situation. It's something that is 90% of my job, that the pupils I've got in my class are particularly challenging. So a lot of what I do on a daily basis is sort of looking at the behaviors they're displaying and thinking, okay, why are they doing that? What can I do to help them to try and prevent this and try and support them? Which is something, again, with sociology, you look at not just the issue or what you're studying. Again, what Eleanor said about sort of looking through a lens, delving a bit deeper and thinking, okay, why are they doing this? And what can I do to help try and change and help them? Because a lot of the time it's a cry for help. They're struggling with something, and actually understanding why helps you build that support. And that's something I do daily. And again, it's like a key point in sociology of understanding the why things happen. So yeah, that's my 2 pence.
Great. It's also, I mean, I'm loving this conversation, because I think it is really, really, I mean, it's so exciting to hear all of you summarize these things, that when you're, engaged with the subject, you just kind of do them. You're engaged in these ways of thinking, and you don't always pause to realize that, like, yes, just that asking why and having an answer that's not just about, oh, well, because that specific thing about you as an individual, but thinking, oh, well, maybe it was something in the group dynamic, or in the environment, or in, those broader sociological processes that I can understand might be affecting what's going on, and that we therefore might be able to see opportunities for change. And it's really exciting hearing all of you sort of think through some of how that sociological thinking has really applied to the different contexts that you've been working in. But I wonder if maybe we can bring this back even more specifically now to sort of thinking about either, a version of yourselves when you sort of trying to figure out what you wanted to study, what kind of career you wanted to go on to, thinking about, what advice would you have now, thinking about students who are in that kind of place, or what advice would you have for your former self in terms of thinking about, what you might approach differently or might consider as you're sort of trying to chart that path for yourself and think about where you get to next as you're trying to plan out a career path and some future opportunities. Nick, I don't know if you would be comfortable starting off, because I know you mentioned very clearly that your initial idea was not the right one in the end, that you couldn't make that happen. Do you have any sort of advice or suggestions that you would either give to yourself or to others in thinking about that path?
I think, yeah, sort of delving on what I said earlier about telling, if I was talking to my previous self, I'd say, like, almost just take a break, like, calm down for a second. It's not the end of the world. You don't need to know. You absolutely do not need to know everything right now. Like, I'm 27. I've got a friend who's just had a massive career change. He was in accounting, and now he's in Asia somewhere, working with like rescue dogs and stuff like that, because he had a complete change, and he's 27. And it happens throughout all stages of your life. There's sort of letting go of that fact of you're in school to make all your life decisions now. You need to prep for your life ahead. And the thing is, when you're 16, 17, you think you're an adult. I mean, you are very grown up, but in terms of now, there's so much life experience and skills I hadn't even touched on yet when I was 16, 17. That's massively shaped what I'm doing now. And that really doesn't sort of come into effect until you're at university, until you're outside of school, that the real sort of impact starts to change. And I think, to summarize, I just say there's no box that you have to fit in, and you don't need to know everything now. To summarize, you do not need to know anything, and you can change what you want to do in a second. You don't need to know it all now. You can have it all planned out. You don't need to follow it. If you suddenly have a change of heart, that's absolutely fine. You don't need to fit in a certain box and listen to all the external input, because parents, my parents, they were very wanted me to go down an academic route. I mean, when I took PE in GCSE, they were like, oh, PE. And it's like, I love PE. Like, why is that not a good? They wanted me to take really academic subjects. And it's like, no. You pick what you want to do. Don't try and sort of bat away the external voices and focus on what you want to do, is what I'd say. Yeah.
Fantastic. Really helpful. Thanks, Nick. Who else has some words of wisdom, either for your former self or for others?
I think when Nick talks about that plan and how there doesn't need to be a plan, I think that's what I'd tell myself, like 21-year-old just about to graduate, Eleanor, that there doesn't have to be a plan, and that life experience is something you're never done completing. That's not something that you ever tick off. And I think I was that just shy of 21, finishing my dissertation, going to grad scheme assessment days, and I was the youngest. People had gone out and lived life and got the life experience and used the skills that we'd learned to then go back to that. So there was so much more of life that I did not realize existed at that stage. I just thought that's what you had to do. But it wasn't. And now I'm in the best place career-wise. Exceeding far better expectations than I've always had for myself. And it's about doing what you're passionate about. I don't live to work because my work is something that I'm passionate about. It's not a tick box exercise. It's something I think to do a job with a sociological mind is to do something that you're passionate about. So it doesn't have to be what's in that plan or follows that streamline of what a sociologist should do or a criminology graduate should do. If it's fulfilling the purpose that you think is important to get you up in the morning, then that's okay. And if it takes a bit longer to get there, you have to slog away to get that life experience. That's also okay too, because it sometimes finds you before you find it. So yeah, we always find things in the most unexpected places, and that's where I found my career now. So yeah, there doesn't need to be a plan. I think that word needs to grow, because there's far more to it than that.
Thank you, Eleanor. Who wanted to come in next?
Just to add to that, I think when you're studying, what you study is such a big part of your identity. And, if you're studying sociology, you do feel it's really a part of who you are, because it says so much about how you like to think about the world and how you want to engage with the world. And I think, looking back to when I was graduating, there's a lot of anxiety about feeling like you need to find a job that is that same thing for you, like it reflects who you feel you really are, and puts you on this path that you think your life is meant to look like, which, as we've been discussing, doesn't really exist. And I guess my advice is just to appreciate that, when you're going into your career, you might do things which don't really feel like they align 100% with who you are. But that doesn't mean you're not going to get to somewhere where you do feel like your job and your values are in alignment, but it just means that you're on a journey, and sometimes you have to start out in something which might not speak to your passions, but it's giving you a skill set or something that you can take to go and move into something that you like a bit more. And not everything comes at once, and that's okay. And there's no rush. I think it's actually very rare that most people, for people to leave school or university and find themselves in their dream job. If ever, I don't know if that ever really happens, actually. So I guess I would say just to remove that expectation and appreciate that things will be incremental, and it'll be in steps, and that's okay, and actually can be quite nice and surprising.
Thank you so much, Jake. Liam, what about yourself?
Advice to my former self, hopefully to people listening as well. Probably lots and lots of advice, lots of mistakes, lots of things to look back on and think, oh, I shouldn't think like that at the time, I didn't do that. But I think one of the best things to do, always a really good principle for any leader, is comes from Socrates, so know thyself. Really important. I think when I was young, didn't really have a clue who I was or what I wanted, and I think lots of people feel like that, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. We're young, we've got a big bright world ahead of us, and we've got lots of decisions to make. So I think trying to find a sense of direction can be difficult sometimes, especially when you're leaving university or college. We get a lot of anxiety about that. I remember I did. So you have to ask yourself sort of, how do I find that sense of direction? And I think knowing myself. So try to understand, what are your strengths, but also at the same time, what are the areas that you need to develop? No one's perfect. And it is, as mentioned by some of the other panelists, it's a journey to be enjoyed, and you learn and discover so much about yourself. So try to be very open and sort of radical honesty with yourself about your areas in need of development and the things you're good at, the things you enjoy. What are your core values? What don't you enjoy? Let them be the thing that guides you to where you want to be. And I would generally say, try to find the things that light a fire in your belly. So the sorts of things that you get interested in debating people on Facebook or Instagram, or the sort of things that around the dinner table you'd get really involved in, those sorts of things, because that's the sort of thing you'll learn about in your own time. So that's yeah, try to learn about yourself would be one of my first bits of advice. I think having audacious grand ambitions and goals, I think, can never hurt people. Yeah, I think people need to believe in themselves more than they do. You'd be very surprised at how much you can achieve with a little bit of confidence and a little bit of self-encouragement. So be bold and have audacious goals. I would say read as many books as you possibly can. I couldn't promote that more. We are losing the art of reading books, and there are so many wise minds in books all around us, and you learn so much from that. So please read as much as you possibly can, but read very diversely. Read books that completely oppose your thinking, that stretch your imagination, and things that you completely disagree with. So that would be something else. I think don't be afraid to ask people for help. That's a really important one. You're young. People are more inclined to help younger people, so exploit that. Ask people for as much help as you can. Ask people as many opportunities you can get. So that's really good. But also be open to helping others when you can. I would say, what else? I would also say, don't expect things to fall into place. I know sometimes people hear that and like, oh, life will always end up in a great place. The reality is it doesn't, and it only comes from hard work, commitment. Try and have these goals set, make a plan. I know the plan may change, and don't be too set on it, but definitely recognize that sometimes things don't go the way you want them to, and they're more likely to if you commit to them and write those goals down and have systems and processes in place and habits that can drive you towards that goal. So yes, that's what I would say to myself, my younger self. So I hope that's helpful.
So many great things in there. And thank you to all of you. I wish I'd heard some of this myself when I was younger, because I think especially if you are at the brink of making a change or trying some other pathway or trying to commit to something big, that reinforcement I think is really important. So hopefully others have found some of your suggestions helpful as well. Thank you so much. We've come to the end of the main discussion, and I think it's time we should open out for some questions. So to everybody watching and listening, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the meeting chat right now. Or if you would like to come on with audio and video to ask your question, then you're more than welcome to do so. Please just raise your hand, and then I'll take some of those as they come. And while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, certainly any of the other panelists who are going to be joining us in the second half of the conversation are welcome to turn on your cameras as well if there's anything you wanted to ask our panel, or any of your sort of burning questions about aspects of what they've said or other aspects of their experience. While we're waiting to see if anybody has anything, I'd be really curious just to know, what were all of your favorite subjects or aspects of the subject when you studied sociology? If you remember.
I'll go on this one. I think what I liked about it was the fact that there was no right or wrong answer. It was, I mean, I know a lot of the time it was you sort of compared two viewpoints. And I mean, I studied it, 10 years ago, but from what I remember of it, I remember it was very much if you have an opinion, you basically say your opinion and then you just evidence it. And there was no right or wrong answer. It wasn't sort of like your science, your maths. There wasn't a specific right answer. It was whatever you believed at the time. I think that's what I specifically liked about it. The fact that there was no right or wrong. It was whatever you believed in. If you can back it up, you can back it up.
Yeah, there is a certain freedom to that kind of approach, which we don't always find in all other places. We do have a few questions coming in, so maybe I'll turn to those now. First, just to answer your question, Louise, the podcast, for anybody who wants to know, and I will in the break add it to the chat as well, but is called JCOS Presents Sound Sociology. And you can search for that on all the podcast platforms. It's on Spotify, as well as I know that there's a Twitter account as well if you want to follow and get updates that way. And then I think what I'll do is just take a few questions together, and then you're welcome, any of the panelists, to come in and sort of answer what you feel best able to answer out of some of the questions. So I think one of the questions that is quite straightforward, that might help kick us off, is around whether you all did sociology degrees, or I know, Eleanor, you already mentioned you did a joint. So Sophia's wondering about whether everybody else did straight sociology or any joint degrees. So that's one aspect. And somebody else, Michael's also asking about where you might look for good places for opportunities. And I'm guessing that is around different types of job opportunities. So if any of you have any good suggestions of places to keep your eye out, that would be really helpful as well. Did anyone want to share in terms of what your subjects were and whether you just had a single honors or a joint honors degree?
So yeah,
Okay.
mine was, I was just gonna say mine was a joint honours in criminology and social policy. So yeah, but I still did a lot of sociology specific modules within that.
Perfect.
Mine wasn't a sociology degree at all. I'd done PE and sports coaching with physiology and human anatomy at Chichester University. So very sport based. So not sociology at all at university. Well, it is, but it's not.
Yeah.
I studied sociology at college level, and then went on to study law at Swansea University.
My degree was actually a sort of composite degree. So it was called Human, Social, Political Sciences. So I did a mix of sociology and politics and anthropology as well.
Fantastic. And Finn's added in the chat that they did women's studies at Lancaster, and then which is also another subject that's very linked to sociology in many ways. Great. Did any of you have any particular places that you found really helpful in terms of looking for job opportunities?
I'd like to promote LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn quite a lot. I use it mainly to teach myself, actually. So I love the whole notion of the best way to learn is to teach, and so I use that platform to post and blog and find new theories, models, articles, news, mostly on things that are quite contentious and edgy and important in society, and I just post about them, and that is a great way for me to learn. But what that also does is it exposes me to all these other organizations, people, and they see the sorts of things that I value, the things I find important, my professional sort of experiences or my knowledge, etc. Maybe it promotes debate, discussion, dialogue. As long as you're professional, well-intended, you form new networks. You've got people who see how you are. I find you can get a much better grasp of who someone is by looking at their LinkedIn profile often, and what they spend time talking about. And maybe you could in a half-hour interview, which may seem a bit orchestrated and stuff like that. So I would definitely say LinkedIn. You can follow all of the best organizations, the best companies, the best CEOs. You can follow local social workers, universities, lecturers, universities. I just think it's a great forum for spreading ideas, learning, networking, finding jobs. I would say my last 2 jobs both come from LinkedIn. So I would definitely promote getting on LinkedIn and using it as a place to learn and share and network. So that would be me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Liam. Really helpful. And oh, did you want to come in on that, Ali?
I was just going to say, when Liam mentioned about networks, I think don't be afraid as well to explore the networks around you. So the amount of people that I know that are in jobs. So my management job came from a network of people that knew enough about me to take that chance on me and had seen my work and my work experience. And I think as well, getting that work experience and getting that exposure to sometimes the industry that you want to go into, to even just spend a day with someone doing that job. I think it's not being afraid to ask those questions, to see what's out there for you, and chat to people and people around you about their jobs, because there may be something about it that's really instrumental to where you see your path going. So I think it's really important to not neglect the people that are right in front of you, because they're going to be the people that want to help you the most.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's great. And Finn has also put a few other specific websites in the chat if anybody wants to check those out as suggestions. So thank you for that. Ren had a question about your career, Eleanor, except I think that may have just been missing the very beginning where we covered that. So I'd suggest, Ren, that you go listen to the podcast, because Eleanor talks at length about the role, and it's really, really interesting. So that might be the easiest way to quickly address that, since we have a number of other questions. I'd be really interested to see, because I know that that some of you, certainly you're not necessarily in positions where you'd be thinking about how teachers face the challenge of finding guest speakers to be able to come in and talk about careers and promote things with A-level students. But if you do have any thoughts about that, and one of the things you said, Liam, in terms of being audacious and just getting in touch and asking people, or using something like LinkedIn, to me actually seems like potentially an interesting option. But certainly if any of you have thoughts on that. And I'd really be interested to hear as well, Tom's asked a question about whether any of you feel the sociology content that you learned at A-level could have been more geared towards careers in a way that would have been helpful for you in supporting your path. I don't know if any of you have reflections on that.
I think in order to answer that about the first question about reaching out to people, so the job I do is incredibly understaffed. Where if you read the news well enough, you'll hear about the probation service and its faults and the concerns around the staffing levels. So I think reaching out to, and it's something that one of the reasons I'm here is because my manager suggested it as outreach work as much as anything, because we're always looking for the new kind of generation of probation officers, people to work in the prison service. So I think it's something I will take away and sharing with them. But I think it's also approaching those areas. If you've got students interested in specific things, is reaching out, because we're desperate for that support. So if we're getting our message out as much, then it's mutually beneficial. So and I think that's definitely something I'm going to take away and share with my powers that be. That there is a massive cohort out there that could do with learning about what we do.
Fantastic. Thank you. Did anyone else want to come in on the issue specifically around the sociology curriculum and what you might have found helpful at the time?
I can't, I'll be very honest with you, I can't quite remember the specific topics and stuff like that we studied. However, I do remember it definitely inspiring me to be more interested in politics and what's going on in the media and contentious issues and debates and sort of just things going on in society generally. So crime, family, and lots of things like that. And I just remember it being somewhere where in our classrooms there was a lot of debate, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was great to have different ideas and people in the room who would say something completely different, and although I may not agree with it, they'd need to justify that.
I think the most
you'd hear a different perspective and you'd think, oh, interesting, I didn't know that. And I thought that's a really good, so I think that it's really good for that, debate and discuss different ideas. But I can't go over too much detail about the exact topics and stuff that we did discuss. It was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. And it makes sense in a way that some of the things you've already been talking about in terms of the key skills that you've taken from that experience are the things that have resonated long term as much as the specific details of the curriculum. There are a few other contributions. Thank you so much, Finn, in response to some of the questions in the chat. One other thing to just mention, Finn does highlight on the BSA website, there's a page on what do sociologists do, and the applied sociology subgroup at the BSA also has links to different websites that feature case studies of sociologists in different types of roles. And so that might be a place, certainly not live speakers, but a place to look at for other resources. And it is really interesting, I think, the question of how we can integrate this into some of what gets taught, because I think there are plenty of ways that some of the key things around careers can be integrated quite easily. For example, around graduate outcomes and the graduate outcomes survey that's done every year. I will put during our break in the chat a link to the website for HESA, where you can actually get subject by subject percentages of which sectors different students who studied an undergraduate degree, which sectors they went on and had employment in afterwards. And it's the kind of thing that you could quite easily do a little exercise with students to just take a look at what those percentages are and sort of theorize, hypothesize around why it is that there's quite a different distribution when it comes to the social sciences compared to something like business management in terms of the different sectors people are going to. So there certainly are lots of interesting ways that we can further these conversations. But as Finn notes as well, we recognize how much work there is already. And so it's really great if we can take some of these resources like the podcast, which I will put in the chat right away, as well as some of these websites, and take them and use them since they already exist to be able to support our conversations. We have come to the end of our time. And so I hope that everyone can join me in thanking, and I should just say that at the end of our time with this set of panelists, we will continue after a short break, but if everyone can join me in thanking all of our panelists, Nick and Jake and Eleanor and Liam, for such an interesting and rich conversation. We really do appreciate all of your time, and we hope you'll stick around in case you want to pipe in later on with our discussion with the students. But thank you so much, everyone. It's been really wonderful learning from you and hearing about your trajectories. So now we're going to take a short comfort break, and we will come back at 3 p.m. So in just under 10 minutes. So if you need to step away from your device, grab a cup of tea or anything else, we'll be back at 3 p.m. with our panel of A-level students and university students to hear more about their experiences. So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you got a chance to step away from the device or stretch at least. So I'm really excited to continue with this second part of our event today. So in the first section, we got a chance to think about that relationship between having a career, where people have gotten to a number of years after, and how that links back to sociology. And now we're going to think a little bit about that earlier stage. And so I'm delighted to have a number of students with us. Please feel free, everyone who's going to be speaking, to turn on your camera if you're happy to do so. And we have students who are from two different levels of study. So some of the students are currently studying at A-level and will be considering their path to studying and going on to university and studying sociology there. Others are currently studying at university and are thinking now about the next stages. And so we're going to hear a little bit more about some of their experiences and perhaps some of the things that have made a difference along the way for them thus far in continuing to engage with sociology or being excited about the subject. And so just to start us off, if we could go around, it'd be great to hear all of you introduce which level of study you're at, and maybe just a topic or a subject perhaps within sociology that you're particularly interested in at the moment. I wonder, Annie and Kira, would you mind starting us off?
Hi, so my name's Annie. I'm in year 13. A particular topic in sociology that I'm particularly interested in is the education part, just because I feel that it leads to every like aspect of society, and it branches out into like people's jobs, is like what we're discussing here today, but then you can also look at like gender and ethnicity and race and even class within that.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kira. I also study A-level sociology, and I'd say maybe my favorite bit is probably the family type, because it shows how it's adapting to what we're like now, with different diversity within the family, how there's lone parents, there's also like gay marriage obviously is coming, and it shows how like there's different versions and how it can impact the children as well as those who are in the relationship.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. Jasmine, I wonder if you want to introduce yourself next.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm currently studying A-level sociology, and my favourite part so far about sociology is education. It's been my favourite, as well as families, and just seeing how there's been a change over time within sociology, and also like how there's loads of aspects still within present day society.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And then I don't think we have, Emily was going to be on the panel with us, but I don't see you. If you are here, please just, oh, there you are. Fabulous, Emily. Over to you then. You weren't on my main screen is all, so I'll hand it. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a year 13 sociology A-level student. I think my favourite part is probably like looking at all the different like perspectives, and I really love looking at like feminism and like Marxism and like class, gender, ethnicity, and like how just everything in society is like different for every person.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Emily. Great. And then we have a few students who are studying at university right now. Sherry, did you want to go first?
Hi, Sherry. I am a third-year sociology student. I also study with quantitative methods. And my favorite topic at the moment, we're learning about global justice and crime control. So it's just looking at, justice all over the world, injustices, and how we can kind of solve that, and what the state, the government, and just us in general are doing to achieve justice for everybody. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sherry. Jodie, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Jodie. I'm also in my third year of university, and my favourite so far is queer theory and feminism. They're sort of my thing.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Inga.
Hi everyone, so I'm Inga and I'm a third year sociology student as well. I think so far this year, my favourite topic has probably been the sociology of disasters. It's been really interesting because I think disasters are normally something we associate with geography. And I'm kind of really coming to love this kind of interdisciplinary crossover and this idea of how power is so interlinked with disasters. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So interesting. Great. So I thought we could start off our conversation with maybe a few contributions from our students who are still studying at A-level to think about sort of how you've gotten to where you are right now, because the title of our event today starts out with this idea of guiding sociologists. And I know certainly there's different people, different ideas, different things that might help guide somebody to think they want to keep studying sociology when it comes to university. And it'd be really interesting to hear from you what has been particularly notable for you in your experience about that help and that guidance to think that maybe you do want to keep studying sociology as you continue your education. Who wanted to come in first on that? Annie or Kira, would you be willing to have a go?
Yeah, so I think for me, a reason why I continued to start studying sociology from GCSE then to A-level and then wanting to do it as a degree is because it's just something that I like genuinely enjoy, and like and I think one of the main factors that contributes towards that is the fact that there's never one correct answer, and there's so many perspectives that comes into sociology. And although like you may end up leaning towards one perspective or another, there's never just one correct perspective. And I think that can also help in like going about daily life and looking at like contextual situations. So that's why I want to continue studying it.
Yeah, so I'd agree with her, but I also think that it offers like an alternative explanation for why things happen in society. So for example, what we do in education is why like certain students underachieve. There's like, so ethnicity, gender, what Annie was saying earlier, and then in terms of like beliefs, you learn how it, like secularization, how it's decreasing. And I think it makes you acknowledge that there's not necessarily like one reason, and that it's a multitude of things that make things occur, basically. So yeah, that's why I want to carry it on.
Yeah, so interesting. It resonates very much with me, certainly. Jasmine, would you be able to come on? Do you have something that's been notable for you in terms of what's guided you to think you want to keep studying sociology?
Well, one reason why I keep like wanting to study sociology is like the fact that there also isn't no right or wrong answer. So I agree. And also like the perspectives as well, like, and just seeing how they've evolved over time. And also one thing about sociology is that it really like allows you to question society, like certain decisions you make. Am I doing this because of like what I'm seeing online? Has this perspective influenced like my choice in what I'm doing? Like, for example, education and Marxism, am I like conforming? And it's just overall very interesting, and that's why I want to continue studying it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jasmine. What about you, Emily?
I think I'd kind of say like similar things, like just looking at all the different like perspectives that come into one subject, and it's just such like a wide variety of things that you're learning about, talking about, like discussing in class. It's just, I want to like continue that, like look into like deeper like organizations, look into deeper subjects. I'm like particularly like interested in gender and sexuality and all that sort of stuff, and I want to look into that more when I go to university, because that's something that I'm offered at the university I want to go to.
Fantastic. Yeah, and it is great if you have that kind of, it sounds like many of you have different sort of interests, but it's all something you want more of. An opportunity to sort of grow that. Really exciting. So I'm really curious to know from our panelists who currently are studying and have been for a few years at university, looking back and thinking about your own experiences when you were at that stage that the other panelists are, of just trying to make that decision and think about what you're going to do at university, what it's going to be like. What do you wish you knew back then? Is there anything that similar to I asked the previous panel, is there anything that you would have wanted to tell yourself that would have been helpful in that experience? And who wants to kick off with that?
I'm happy to kick off. So I think the thing I would tell myself, but also I think all of you, is firstly, I love the education module as well. That was brilliant. And also I think the first thing I think I'd say is carry on following the interests you have at A-level, because when I did A-level, I quite liked theory and kind of big concepts. I quite like learning about Marxism and feminism, but I think also like allow yourself to be surprised. And I think that's brilliant, being able to kind of follow new interests and kind of be changed almost by sociology. I kind of went into the degree thinking I was going to want to carry on doing all my modules about feminism and about gender, and I've kind of found myself still loving gender issues, but also kind of getting taken on by new things that I didn't expect to enjoy.
Yeah, that's great. So keeping an open mind, even if you are pursuing those passions. Thanks, Inga. Really interesting. Jody or Sheree, which one of you wanted to come in next on that?
I think for me, I would have wanted to know more about job opportunities that were possibly, you know, after I finished uni and whatnot, because I know that with sociology, I never knew there was like a range of different jobs I could have gone into. So I feel like sociology is like a good safe option in the sense that can kind of give you all the various skills that you need, and you know that by the time you finish, you can kind of go out into the world of work and kind of expand on that. And I also wanted to be prepared for the range of topics as well that I would be learning about, because like Inga said just before, that you'll be learning about a variety of things. And I think having an open mind and also just, you know, being eager to learn and to understand certain perspectives that may be different to yourself is a really good tip. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Jody, what about you?
Yeah, so I sort of on the similar lines, but sort of the amount of topics you can have at university means you can really hone in on those interests. So for me, going to university, I was very much interested in a multitude of things within sociology, but coming to university has really enabled me to hone in on those topics that I genuinely am so passionate about. So a lot of my modules have been around feminism, have been around queer theory and social justice. So it's sort of nice to have that sort of choice and option to do that. And then another note is to sort of what I would have told myself is there may be times when you start doubting yourself, but just know that you are worthy to be there and you're worthy to be studying sociology, no matter what people tell you, whether they're like, oh, what are you going to do after uni? Like with that degree, just stick by what you're enjoying and what you're passionate about.
That is really important. Thank you so much, Jody. And I think that resonates with what Liam was saying before too, about even if it seems like an audacious or a bold decision, you know, sticking by it can be really important. Thank you. Great. So, you know, I think it's really interesting because in the previous panel, we did hear about some of the kinds of skills that our alumni felt like they were still using, or things that they thought were really important that they learned from sociology. I'd be really interested to hear from all of you. You know, are there particular ways that you think studying sociology has already helped you to grow or to develop particular skills or different ways of looking at the world and what you're taking in or questioning from it? Annie and Kira, would you mind starting us off? Is there anything that you feel like is sort of a set of skills or approaches that you've really grown through your study of sociology so far?
I'd say some of the skills I've learned is maybe what we were saying earlier of accepting different views and kind of creating, just knowing that not everyone's going to agree and that there's criticisms of different ones. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the main one.
And I think for me, it's a bit similar to what I've said before. It's about like contextual understandings, and there isn't going to be always one reason why somebody does something. Like looking at like crime, like it's not necessarily just because of like your upbringing that you commit crimes. There's going to be other social factors such as money or like deviant subcultures that you're going to engage with that's going to lead you to that. Just having that wider contextual understanding, I think, is really important.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Jasmine, what about you?
Sorry, it's Emily here. Jasmine actually had to go to an like A-level meeting.
Oh, well, that's extremely
for another
important.
Subject. I know.
Well, go ahead, Emily, if you wanted to contribute.
Yeah, I think I'd say that it's good because it helps like looking at like the positives and the negatives of like different things, and like looking at different, like questioning different viewpoints with like other viewpoints. I find it quite helpful to, especially because I also study psychology at the moment. I find those subjects like go together quite well to like evaluate different points. You can bring in like so many different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Emily. And what about Inga and Cherie and Jody, what are your thoughts? What do you think your experience studying sociology at university has helped you do in terms of growing and expanding your knowledge and your skills?
It helps me understand myself and my kind of position within society as well, especially as a woman of color and everything. Is, you know, trying to see how I can navigate what the things are, you know, just kind of seeing things and being able to say, right, cool, I can kind of read more about it and I can see how I can navigate it in life, and also how I can kind of advocate for change as well, so that everybody has equal opportunities as well. So I feel like it's helped me understand who I am a little bit more, but also about the different characters and different people that we see in life, and understanding their experiences and walks of life as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Cherie. Really important.
Yeah, just to sort of add on a similar sort of line, it sort of helps me become more socially aware. So it kind of, sociology raises issues and it raises questions about equality. And I think it's really encouraged me to start taking sociology and actually applying it to create change. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is becoming more socially aware to actually make a difference.
It's really interesting. Would you mind, Jody, I'm putting you on the spot, but would you mind giving a kind of example, if you have one, from your experience?
Yeah, of course. So for me, obviously, a lot of my interests lie in feminism and queer theory, which has enabled me to get into feminist spaces, both within the university and outside of university. And within those spaces, I've been able to join activist groups and fundraising groups and actually advocate for social change. So recently I've done the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, where we did a multitude of sort of different demonstrations and marches to sort of raise awareness about this inequality that women and non-binary people face. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Really, really interesting to hear. Inga, what about you? What have you grown or developed through your study of sociology?
I feel like there's a lot of different answers I could kind of come to, but I think the main thing I've been thinking about is this idea that the struggles and kind of issues that we face are really like important. And I think that's really important, like understanding yourself, as like Sherry said, but this idea that kind of what we want to talk about and the discussions we have and our experiences should be kind of at the center of what we study and do. And so like our experiences are enough. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you all. And I think it's really interesting because there certainly were resonances with what the previous panel had to say, but also things that are quite different. And I can see how that both relates to your own individual trajectories and experiences, but also to those stages of education and the differences, what we learn in these different parts of our lives. So I wonder if we could move to think a little bit more about that experience, that those of you who are in university, nearly finished, looking towards what happens afterwards, that particular experience you're having right now of perhaps thinking about where you're moving next in relation to that Everett Hughes quote, or what you're hoping, imagining, perhaps not planning, given what the previous panel said about plans and the way that we might approach them. But I'd be really interested to hear what your thoughts are at the moment in terms of what you think you might do next, or how you're approaching that question, which is sometimes a very loaded question when people ask you, what are you doing next? Who's happy to share first your sort of thoughts to the next stage after you finish university?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Sorry. And yeah, so I've sort of got two goals in mind for the future, not at the same time. We're going to take it step by step. But one of the goals that I want to do with my sociology degree is actually work for a charity, either one that's based on gender-based violence, or one due to LGBTQ rights. And I want to be able to use my sociology degree to sort of work in these spaces to actually create change and make a difference to people's lives. I also want to go into the research side of things. So I do want to complete my master's and potentially a PhD way into the future within gender and women's studies. So yeah.
Fantastic, really interesting. And do you feel, Jody, like you know what you're hoping that path looks like, or are you more like some of our panelists that you're just going, I know I want to get there eventually, and I'll figure out how that happens?
Yeah, kind of a bit of both. So I've sort of got a sort of goal for the next 3 years. So what I'll do is I'll go for a year, go and try and work in a charity. If I can't get in work-wise, I'm going to volunteer. And then the 2 years after that, I'm going to go do my master's, hopefully. So that's sort of the path, and then go back to the charity work. But obviously, like the panelists before said, there is a lot of pressure to plan and a lot of pressure to know exactly what you're doing. And I think that can be scary, because if that plan doesn't go to plan, it is quite daunting. So I am trying to just sort of be like, this is a vague idea, but if it doesn't work that way, it doesn't mean I've failed with my degree. I'm still going to use it, and I'm still going to be able to apply sociology no matter what I do.
Great, thank you so much. Cherie, did you want to come in next?
So my plan, I'm not planning to go straight into the world of work, because we've had 3 years, which was we started uni in the middle of a pandemic, and it's been quite a heavy 3 years. So my plan is more just to kind of do 6 months after uni to just kind of decompress from university, but also think of how I can still use my degree in a really fun way. So one of those reasons is I want to go traveling as well. So I'm trying to figure out different ways where I can immerse myself in other cultures and try and learn about different people, but still kind of keep sociology at the core of it. And then afterwards, start applying for jobs and stuff. So I'm not really trying to go full in, but, you know, just kind of using that time to rest and also see where the future takes me, really.
Yeah, that's great. And I think really important as well, because sometimes you can reflect most effectively on, you know, what next or what you're trying when you do have a full tank yourself to support that. So
no, definitely.
Great. Thank you so much. What about you, Inga?
In the long term, I really don't have any plan. I think I've kind of decided that at this moment in time, I think the best thing to do is to do a master's, because I love sociology so much that I just can't really imagine not studying sociology. So maybe I'm just doing a master's out of the fear of not studying. But so I see that's kind of my next year. And then a year down the line, after that, I'm not sure at all what I'm going to be doing. Maybe some kind of form of activism, something to do with social justice. But I feel like, as we saw earlier, that can kind of take you anywhere.
Yeah, it is interesting, because I think you know, there is that aspect of finding a path that is a bit experimental and a bit sort of testing things out sometimes, and sort of going, oh, I'll do this for a bit and then see how it lands. I've certainly known students as well who've taken out a year, very much as you are, Cherie, and then use that year to figure out, like, do I actually want to go and do a master's? Do I not want to? Do you know, what's looking exciting to me now that I've had a few different experiences, which can be really part of the process that's helpful in the end as well, because it does sort of help you realize, oh yes, I do have the enthusiasm to do more study, or no, I really want to be interacting with more people and not just in a university context. So so that sounds really exciting, Inga, in terms of sort of leaving that open so you can figure it out as it's happening. I'd be really curious, before I go back to the rest of our panel, if there was anything in particular that struck you from what the previous set of panelists had to offer in terms of their kind of reflections on careers, and anything that stood out to you as something you thought, oh, that really resonates, or that, like, yeah, it's helpful for me to hear that, or to reflect upon that more later. Was there anything that really struck you in particular?
I would say for myself is that I went to uni when I was 18, then I dropped out. Then I took 4 years out of education, just working as youth worker, doing all different things. And then I decided to come back at uni. So I feel like university doesn't have an age limit on it. You can go at any single time. So it's more of a thing of like, even when you finish A levels and you feel like you're not directly ready to go straight into uni, take the time out to kind of discover the world of work, discover what it is that you want, and then obviously go to uni. So I studied sociology when I was 18 and I came back again to do that at 22. So it's probably one of the best decisions I've made. So it was definitely good to see how relatable it was with the other panelists as well, that, you know, life doesn't always go the way you want it to go, but it always goes how it's meant to go, and it works out better for you. So yeah.
So nice to hear that experience, Shuri, because I think that is a really important thing for people to recognize, that if it doesn't work out the first time, it's not necessarily because of you, or, you know, I've known other people who sort of went, okay, no, that I wasn't in the right place trying to study it. The subject was right, but it wasn't the right place. Or sometimes the subject isn't right and you switch and then it works out for you, or whatever that is. So it's really helpful to hear that experience. And Inga or Jody, was there anything you were reflecting on that was particularly helpful, or sort of thoughts stemming from that first panel?
I think for me was, I don't remember who said it, but they said about how one of the biggest contributions sociology makes is this idea of like, you ask different questions. And I found that really actually quite, like, it really just struck a chord with me, kind of, this idea that you can kind of not notice in like being in a group of sociologists that actually you ask such different questions to other people. And I think I've seen that at university, and I think it also just, I think it's something really powerful to remember, that we as sociologists contribute to the world, and hopefully like with careers that can kind of follow through.
Yeah, really important. Thank you, Inga. I think that is something we all need to keep reminding ourselves, that our questions are extremely important. Jody, was there anything you wanted to reflect on?
Yeah, I suppose one of the big things was the fact that there is no sort of guideline on what careers you can get with sociology, and I think the panelists really showed that, and showed that we're doing all these different types of careers, and actually sociology is applicable to every single one. And I think there is a lot of like assumptions around what is a sociological sort of career, but actually the panelists have proved that no matter what you're doing, you can apply, and if you follow your beliefs, which is one of the big things I think that I really took from that, is if I keep following my beliefs, I can transfer all the skills and all the passion I have into anything that I choose to do. So I think that was probably the biggest.
Yeah, really important and really, really well summarized. Thank you so much, Jody. All right, I think I'll bring back in some of our A-level students again, those who are still able to be with us, because I think, I mean, there's both a question that I know I'm springing upon you, so if nothing comes to mind, no problem whatsoever, but if there is anything that you think would be really helpful to ask the university students that we have with us that you'd be really curious about, you know, certainly I think you could take this opportunity to ask some questions about that experience of studying at university, or what that transition is like. But if not, the other thing I'd be really interested in is actually just what kind of opportunities you see right now for where sociology seems really important or really exciting. And that might link to some of the things that each of you said you're particularly interested in, and how it's making you think differently, or it might just be about you know, your understanding of sort of things that might be going on in the world, or where it seems like that kind of sociological questioning or thinking could be particularly beneficial. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that in terms of where you think or why you think sociology is important in particular ways. But if you have questions for the other students as well, feel free to pepper them in. Annie and Kira, did you want to set us off?
Yeah, so I have a question for the university students. How would you say that you got over, like, I'd say, like, how did you get over the stigma of sociology when you say to somebody that you're studying sociology? Because even now, like, sociology is like my favorite subject when I'm doing A levels, but like I tend to list it second or third when I say like the A levels that I'm doing. So how do you get over like maybe like the prestige or like the setting that it has in like universities? I hope that makes sense.
That's great. Great question. And did I don't know, Cherie or Jody or Inga, if one of you is happy to take that?
Yeah. Oh.
I was going to say, go ahead, Inga, and then we can bring Cherie in.
I think it's important to remember that it's always a difficult thing for sociologists, and it doesn't like disappear. And I think like it's something you kind of have to do yourself. I faced quite a lot of like difficulties in first year, particularly from computer scientists saying that they were going to get jobs and that they were doing a brilliant degree. And what sociology, like what's that for? Like kind of dismissing it. And I think it's more that you kind of have to find your own reasoning. And I think it's very much like it comes with time of kind of being like, I know why I'm doing this. And you might have like a part of that within you at the moment, but I think that becomes more secure over time, that you kind of go, well, I know why I'm doing it. And I mean, now I would say I know why I'm doing it because sociology is one of the most fundamental subjects for social justice. And I think as soon as you say that to someone, if they turn around and say sociology isn't important, I think that tells you more about them than sociology as a subject.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really, really great, Inga. Thank you. Cherie, what about you?
I said it all, to be honest. I think it's, when you look at sociology is all around us, and it's understanding that, you know, society today is because of sociology. The way we understand it is because of sociology. So having a bit of pride in that and saying, you know what, I'm studying a subject that is to better the world, not just for me, for my grandkids and so on and so forth. So you're doing a work that's not just for you today. And I think there's so much pride and so much, you know, confidence in saying that. So when someone asks you about, oh, why do you study sociology? You can always say, because I'm looking forward to changing the world. I'm looking for a better place for future, you know, for future people to live in. And I think that says a lot, because you know it's going to be something that's going to be after you, if that makes sense. So yeah, just have a lot of pride in that, and you know, just be confident. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thank you, Cherie. Did you want to come in on this one, Jody? Or
I mean, I'm just sort of echoing what the other two said. It's sort of be proud in when you tell people what your favorite subject is or what you're going to do at degree level. Be proud in that, be confident in that. And if you do receive backlash, just sort of dismiss it. And then in sort of a university setting, so like Inga said, like computer scientists being like, what are you going to do with that? I get that still to this day. I probably get it every week from different people. You just have to turn around and say, yes, granted, there's not a career path necessarily, but actually I'm doing more than that. I am making a difference. And I think that's the most important thing, to just be proud of it.
Yeah, I think that's all really important. The only other thing I could share, which is actually something that an alumnus who works in a tech company, but trained as a sociologist, said, was that actually I think some of people's sort of stereotypes about, oh, well, what are you going to do with sociology, can also transform when you point out the fact that what they know is also limited. So this person's experience was that, you know, they're sitting around with brilliant computer scientists, people who are doing all these other aspects of tech development, but that they will then ask a question like, oh, well, do you think people will like it? Or something very basic that's sort of around the social dynamic. And none of these other very intelligent people had thought to ask that question. So I think that's the other thing that can sometimes help, is just pointing out that actually the kinds of challenges we have today in all different kinds of sectors and different groups within society require lots of different people's thinking and different kinds of knowledge and different ways of collaborating to actually address them. And that's another way that sociology can really help, is make sure that we participate in those conversations wherever they might be happening. But thank you so much, Annie. Great question. I don't know, Kira or Emily, if either of you have any other questions for the other panelists that you wanted to ask.
I think the only other thing that I kind of wanted to ask was like, is there like distinct differences between A-level sociology and university sociology, like in the way that, I don't know, like how essays are like written, like if there's like goes into more depth into things that we don't go into depth at this like point in time, like as an A-level student, like what are like the most like the differences that I should be preparing for when I go to uni to study it?
Great question. Who wanted to start with that one?
I mean, I can. I think the biggest thing is that it is different. Not necessarily in the sort of topics you're looking at, but the way you sort of learn is very different. It's very, at least for me, because of the university I go to, it is very research based. So everything's to do with the present and everything's sort of to do with active research that is going on. And also we go into much more depth on topics I'd never even heard of in A-level. So A-level for me was very much repeating facts. Actually at university you have an option to sort of be placing yourself within these facts and placing yourself within these debates and arguments, and you learn new debates and arguments. Like before I came to university, I didn't know queer theory was a thing. I'd never heard of it. And now I'm placing myself through my dissertation within these debates. So I think that's the sort of thing to know, is that you will end up placing yourself in these debates and learning about new debates, but it's not necessarily a bad thing or a negative change. I think it's actually a positive change and sort of a development in your learning. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Jody. And that just linked to a question that somebody had asked in the chat, which was which universities each of you are at. That I think we didn't say in the introductions, but some people were curious about. So Jody is at Lancaster. I don't know if Inga or Cherie, you wanted to also respond to this question, and you could say where you are if you do want to respond to this one.
Go to Manchester Metropolitan University. And in order to answer that question, I would say the difference is maybe referencing. So I think back in A-level, usually you just kind of write things without actually having to reference, but in university it's very much saying, obviously your fact is right, but who said it as well to support that? So it's kind of like Jada was saying, just kind of, you're putting forward your own, your own views and thoughts and everything, but you need someone to back it up. So it's always having research, books, to being, putting yourself in a routine of getting ready to read a lot of reading. That's going to be one thing. And I also say that you kind of figure out your own interest as well. And I feel like we also have the freedom to kind of, you've got a question and you've got the freedom to kind of explore it as many ways as possible. Just make sure that you always back it up with literature and academic journals and stuff. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Cherie. Inga, did you want to come in on this one?
Hi, yes. So I'm also at Lancaster University with Jody. We're actually friends as well, which I think is kind of important to know. And I think the important thing is that I think when I was going to university, I was very scared about essay writing. And I think that's a big thing on the mind of a lot of people going to university. And I think it's about remembering, I think what people said earlier about careers, that this is kind of a journey, that like not overnight you're expected to get the best grade on an essay, but actually you have 3 years, and I'm pretty sure at most universities the first year doesn't count to your overall final grade. And I think this is important, that actually university and education as a whole is about learning and learning skills. And so I didn't overnight know how to write an essay. You kind of build up to these skills, and I think like sixth form is part of that in preparing you for university. But I think also when you get to university itself, there are support networks out there, which I think is important. And often as A-level students, you may not know about those support networks, but actually you can you find confidence in your friends like Jody. So we'll have discussions about essays, but also with academics. And I think that's really something important.
Yeah, really helpful, all of you. Thank you so much. And hopefully that was helpful, Emily. Kira, did you have any questions you wanted to ask the other students?
I don't know if this is really a question for like university students, but I was just kind of wondering, what is your view on like if sociology was going to become a core subject, and that it was kind of taken in the same view as how like maths, English and science is taught, and how like therefore students have a chance of building on it, not only at A level, but GCSE and lower.
Oh, such a good question. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? And I was going to say, Annie and Emily are welcome to come in on that question too, if you have thoughts.
I mean, I didn't actually study sociology before A level. It was never an option for me to do it at GCSE, and I wish there was. I wish even if it was an option, not necessarily core, but have that option, because I think I could have developed my understanding a lot sooner. And I think it sort of would allow a lot of young people to become more accepting of different people, which I think in high school culture is a very big sort of issue. So I think it would sort of change how, if we taught it at a younger age, it would change how society actually functions, because it had become part of the socialization. So I think it's an interesting topic. Don't quite know where my opinion lies, but I do wish it was an option for me. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jody. Cherie or Inga, did you want to come in on that?
I definitely think it should become a core subject because, again, same as Jody, it was never available for me at secondary school. So as soon as hearing about it at A level, I was really like, just indulge in it. And I really wished I learned about it a bit earlier. And I do think that if it is introduced as a core subject, it can help a lot of young people just kind of develop their own thoughts, develop their own beliefs, develop their kind of just understanding of the world that we live in as it's ever changing. And possibly that could also help how we also grow up as adults and stuff. So 100% it needs to become a core subject.
Fantastic. Annie, I was going to say, or Kira, you've got your hand up. Did you want to come back in on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I would agree in that it should be a core subject, even like just because I feel that in other subjects you're very fixed. For example, in English, you're just looking at like texts and you're very like dived into that world, or maths, you're just looking at numbers. Versus I feel, especially in the past 2 years of A-level sociology, we've spoken about sciences, we've spoken about maths, we've spoken about like history, all within sociology, and it just gives you a lens, but not a fixed lens. It gives you a lens like of multiple different layers, and like a microscope kind of like school and just like society in general. So I definitely think it should be a core subject. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Annie. Emily, I think, wants to come in as well.
Yeah, I think I've got to agree. Like, I couldn't do sociology at GCSE because it wasn't an option for me. So when I started at A level, I found that it really opened my eyes to like a lot of things that I'd never like thought of before. And like, I feel like it's started to like help me like develop like an opinion about different like things that I had absolutely no idea about. And I think that's quite important for people like to learn like at a young age that you can have opinions. And like, I don't know, I feel like it's just helped in like conversations with like family, where obviously with older generations, they've got different opinions to me as a younger person, especially because I am like a feminist, I am like part of the queer community. I find that we do have differing opinions on like some subjects, and I think I kind of feel like it's helped me back up myself in some arguments, because you can kind of be like, well, actually, there's been some research about da 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 da, which is quite funny to put into a conversation. But I think it's just like helped me to like get ideas like about society and like what I like think in general.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Emily. That's really interesting. Inga, did you want to come in around this?
Yes, I mean, I agree with everything that's come before, although I do have a slightly differing opinion, in the sense that I'm not necessarily sure I would advocate for sociology on its own. at all levels. I think potentially a more pragmatic situation would be potentially going down the line of social sciences, of kind of going down this idea that actually we need to advocate for not just sociology, but also politics. But I think this kind of fits into my idea that actually we as young people need educating about not just the social world, but also the political world. And kind of, I think also that I think we should be educated about the past and history. And I think this comes with other kind of ideas myself about what history should be. And history needs to be also aligned with sociology. And I think this kind of comes from a more social science approach. And I think adding politics in, not just sociology at an earlier age, would be very beneficial. So people actually understand the voting system that we have, or what does it mean to vote? I think these are important questions.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, thank you to all of you for those. Thank you, Kira, for that question and for all of your contributions. There's been some lively chat as well from others. And I think this has really resonated in terms of the importance that many of us see and thinking about, as we do as sociologists, how we make the world, how we could change the world, how things might be different if we had education structured differently in this case. So thank you so much for a really interesting set of discussions there. I, in my chairing job, really should move us on to questions and answers so that we don't run out of time for any questions for all of you, because we've had such an interesting conversation. So if anyone listening has any questions for our panel of students, please do share in the chat, and I'm very happy to pose them to the students. Or if there's anything that ties back together with any of the previous panelists, they are still around, that we could try to take a quick question that might cut across. Oh yeah, one interesting question from Sophia around whether those who are at university are studying a BA or a BSc in sociology. I was going to say, I'm guessing, I know that at Lancaster, it's a BA in sociology. Cherie, is your degree a BA or a BSc?
As a BA, and I could have had the choice to remain as a BA, but I decided to go down as the BSc route for my third year because my dissertation and my placement. So my placement and dissertation are based on quantitative data. So yes, I've had the pleasure of doing actual both, and the difference I'd say is I think more towards like maybe just the dissertation, that you obviously you do more quantitative and then more qualitative for your BA, whereas BSc you do more quantitative, but they're pretty much the same. It's just, yeah, I'd say it's the same.
Yeah. Great, really helpful, Cherie, thank you. And I think it probably will differ quite a lot between different universities, but perhaps relates back to that point earlier in the event, in terms of, when people are graduating and talking about what they do, it might be as much around some of the skills that people have and not necessarily just around what the title of your degree is. So in that sense, if you've got those skills, it isn't necessarily going to make a big difference if it's a BA or a BSc. And yes, Finn's just saying in the chat as well, an MA versus an MSc, they're different titles, but they don't necessarily signal as much difference when it comes to applying for jobs as one might think. And yes, thank you, Finn. Really helpful point in terms of the main thing is that the module options, the kinds of subjects you're interested in, are addressing your interests. And the difference in the title is not necessarily going to be the biggest thing to consider there. Oh, very interesting question again for the panelists who are at uni. What year of uni has been the most interesting for you?
All of them. I can't pick one because the way it's worked is the modules I picked in first year, I've then taken those interests and then chose modules in my second year based on those, and the same for my third year. So for example, in first year I did gender and women's studies as an option, and in second year I chose gender and media, and then in third year I chose feminisms and social change. So it's very much my interests have carried out throughout, so I can't actually choose one. I don't know if it's different for other people, but that's sort of my take on it.
Thank you, Jody. Cherie or Inga, did you want to come in on this at all?
My favourite years were second year and third year, because first year we weren't really given the option due to the pandemic. So we were just kind of given a list of, modules that we would be doing. But then when it came to second year, we had the ability to choose, and third year, there's more choice in the question in terms of like, this is a topic, but you can kind of expand as much as you want to, especially with like your dissertation and stuff as well. So I'd say second and third year are probably the most freest years for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cherie. What about you, Inga?
I'd say it's a very like personal thing, but I think for me, probably second year, just because I can kind of reflect on second year, and I know that for me personally, I changed a lot. I think as a person, I think I can look at what I did at the start of the year and what I thought, and by the end of the year, after doing like 8 different modules, me as a person, I changed quite a lot, and I think I did things that surprised myself, like doing research, and I think that kind of has set me up for this year. And so I think second year was probably the most interesting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We don't have any other questions coming in, so I might sneak back in the question that I'm very happy we got distracted from, because the questions from the A-level students were fantastic. But as a parting thought, do any of you have something that you think is particularly important or exciting about sociology, either that you were thinking about before this conversation, or that now, having heard all of these conversations, you're taking away as something that you think, yes, this is why our subject's so important and why I'm glad to be involved in it?
I would say that the interesting thing for me is that sociology is a subject that you're always learning, and there's always something new to learn. There's nothing boring about it. It's just continuously kind of evolving. So for me, it's like I've got a lifetime to learn about sociology and different topics and different things that interest me, and I can continue to learn. So I feel like that's the interesting side of things, and that's what's kind of excites me, because I'm just like, well, I've learned about this, what else can I go on to learn? And there's always going to be something there that I can learn and kind of, reflect on, and just, help be a better person and just help society as well in that sense. So yeah, we've got a lifetime to learn about sociology. So that's the interesting thing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cherie. Did anyone else want to come in on that?
I feel like for me, the main thing, and I think this has kind of reminded me this session, is that like sociology brings people together. And I really love the conversations that I get into with people that know what sociology is or have an interest in finding out what it is. I think it just leads to so many interesting conversations and friendships and kind of discussions, because I just think there's so many different opportunities and things to talk about, because I think it is ever growing, like we've been discussing. I think it just brings people together, and I think that's brilliant.
Absolutely. I've never met most of the panelists in real life, and yet I feel like I'd love to sit down and have another conversation. I think that's a good indicator of exactly what you're talking about, Inga. Thank you so much. Did anyone else want to come in on that one?
I mean, I suppose it's just echoing what Cherie and Inga said about like it's constantly relevant, and it means that everyone can engage in conversation with it, because it is about society. So like my housemates do science and I do sociology, but I can still come home and have sociological conversations with them to sort of bring in these sociological ideas and these relevant sort of things that are affecting their lives that they would have never thought of because they are science students. So I think it is that like constant reflection and the constant application to everyday life.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So interesting and so valuable to hear all of your thoughts on that. We've come to a point where we need to start wrapping up and pulling things together here at the end. So if all of the panelists, both from this student panel and anyone who was on the earlier panel for those who've been working for a while, if you're able to turn on your camera again so that we can see you all as we say thank you, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much to Annie and Kira and Emily, and please, Emily, thank Jasmine as well for the part of the conversation that that Jasmine was able to be a part of. And thank you to Cherie and Jody and Inga, and thank you so much to our earlier panelists, to Eleanor and to Liam and to Jake and to Nick. It has just been fantastic hearing all of your thoughts and your experiences, and it's been really valuable for me because I think it's really highlighted and reminded me about how much we all have to offer and how important our subject is, as well as all of the ways that we are then able to have those conversations with different groups. So thank you so much to all of you. It's been a real pleasure chairing this conversation. And I think we do have a few other thank yous from some of our BSA colleagues. I don't know if Finn or if Tallulah was going to come on and do some final thank yous, but I'll pass back to you now.
Hi. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Oh, all good.
You can hear me okay, yeah? Fantastic. I would just first of all like to give a massive thank you to you, Alison, for chairing. A massive thank you to Finn for doing the introduction. A huge thank you to Sunny for organising a lot of this event, along with Nicola as well. And a massive thank you to all the presenters for attending, for sharing your thoughts, and for making this event really, really exciting, diverse. And again, a huge thank you to everyone that attended. I really, really hope that you enjoyed the event. It's been really, really fascinating. And I can certainly say from this end, we've all really enjoyed listening to it.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Tallulah, for all your support as well in organizing it.